Welcome, everyone, to the ADE webinar, The Power of Placement with Sibylla Lenz. Sibylla, we are thrilled to have you with us. This is such a wonderful, wonderful topic. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you, Anne, and thank you for inviting me and all the listeners. I love this topic. I'm passionate about this topic, and I think you'll hear that as we go forward. But I want to give you a little bit of background on myself. When we talk about this office, having power in our office, I have two offices, have been in business for the last 25 years. So I'm all about the office and doing placement and, what it does for us. So um, one of the things I thought I'd start out with, there was a little quote that I had just gotten emailed. Quite often. I find that when I start to do these types of presentations that I seem to be helped by all kinds of invisible help putting things in place. So I hope you find this as interesting as I did. In the Power of Your Space, there was in 1958 there was a French philosopher named Gaston Bachelard, and he published a book called The Poetics of Space. And he maintains that our minds thrive in spaces that allow us to daydream and become stagnant in spaces that feel depressing or oppressive. So it's been studied that our thoughts and our emotions and ultimately our sense of self are tied to our surroundings. Where we are has the potential to mold who we are. So that being said, I thought we would just kind of launch right into what we're going to talk about.
That
I have some.
sounds.
Pardon me.
I said that sounds great. I think we can all relate to our surroundings influencing us, because of course that's our belief as well, but just not quite, I think, in the way that you're going to share with us. So please.
Exactly.
Share.
So what I'm going to talk about, I run a couple of businesses, and 15 or 16 years ago, I got very involved in feng shui when I had a person come to my office and told me some things that I needed to do. And one of the things right out of the gate she discussed was clutter. And although embarrassed, I did a lot of the moves that she suggested I do. And within a couple of years, so many things changed in my life. It was actually uncanny. And so it really taught, helped me launch into being certified in Western Bagua and Flying Star Feng Shui. And this has so many layers of this topic that I thought what I would do is just kind of outline it for our listeners, and talk about, how important it is to understand that there's like three different areas we'll focus on. One is our birth luck or our Bazai, and the next area is going to be our earth luck. So how we are going to manipulate our environment with the elements and the chi. And then the next we'll talk about arranging the office, because that's what makes all of our juices flow, is if we can understand how our office supports us once we set up the arrangements. And then finally, being able to understand and use the Bagua, either using Western Bagua as one of the modes or using classical Flying Star. And I'll give you some examples, of each, so that, you'll understand which one you may want to start diving into or applying, or maybe there's some out there that already know. Does that help?
Sounds wonderful.
Okay, great. So moving on, the first thing we're going to talk about is Bazai. And Bazai goes hand in hand with Feng Shui. In fact, for thousands of years, Feng Shui masters have employed or been employed in, the ancient Asian culture, especially, to ensure that the landforms were conducive to the occupants in the emperor buildings, and also for making sure that they buried their loved ones in the most ideal spots, so that that would ensure that they would have a great life ahead. But also there is a form or a study called Bazai that helps you understand what your own personal earth luck is. And that's very helpful because it's similar to astrology, only much more in depth. And what it does is it gives you some really profound information if you're lucky enough to tie into somebody that, and I'm at the end of this presentation, Anne, I have
Yeah,
a whole screenshot of all the resources that I'm going to be talking about so that, the listeners will be able to go in and copy all of that, write that, what they want to
fabulous.
use.
Good.
So the
That's fabulous.
bonsai, what you do is you use your date of birth and your time and your year, if your date of birth and your time, meaning the hour and the minutes. And every one of us, when we come in, it is as I have studied under Bazai masters, and when we come in, we have a certain amount of or certain types of energies that are predominant within us. So I'm going to use myself as an example so that it can give you an idea of what you'd find out in a Bazai reading or chart, or even just simply going to my friend and partner, Susie Miller. You can go to her Feng Shui Paradigm site, and I have that at the end of the screens. And that'll also give you your gut Gua number so that it can give
Oh,
you the following information. So in other words, what you're looking for is you have a specific, each one of us has a specific number which relates to an element that's predominant with us, each person. So my number is an 8, my Gua number, which means that I am a West group person. And that means that my 4 best directions are west, northeast, southwest, and northwest. So if I am seated at my desk facing west, northeast, southwest, or northwest, one of those best directions, then magnetically I'm more aligned with the energy that I came in with. Does that make sense?
okay. So just so I'm clear, the difference then, because I was thinking it sounded a lot like astrology, but in fact it takes it to a little bit of a different level when you talk about, yeah, well, as you say here, your power direction. So yes, that's making a lot of sense now. Yes.
Right. So, sometimes if you'll find in feng shui books, if you're looking for your personal number and even online, you can Google and look for your personal Gua number, and Gua is spelled Gua, and that will ask you to put in your date of birth, and that will give you that information. And it's very useful because now you're helping to manipulate your energy. So in a Bazai report, it's actually it's more in depth, very detailed, and it will give you things like I also am a yin earth person, which means that if I want to have extra energy for myself or feel more energized, one of the elements that would support me in that is giving me some fire. So maybe wearing a blouse to a meeting or a business suit that had some red on it would ignite the earth energy in me and help me feel more energized. So not just
Okay.
for
Okay.
seated in our office, but if you could find out what your predominant element is, then it can also help you with that, so that you can find out what and most people know what their element is innately, I find. Some people love to wear metal colors, some people love to wear earth
Uh,
colors. And you see what I'm saying?
I do. Yes. Yes. Yes.
So the next thing about this Bazai chart is there's power directions and then there's unlucky directions. So quite often I'll find, especially if I'm working with a couple or even someone, in society now, we have a predominance right now of 60 to 70% of people sleep less than 6 hours a night. And a lot of that is, we're spending a third of our lives in our bedroom. And if we can't be nourished while we sleep, sometimes sleeping in our best power direction, which means the way your head is going. So if you could take a compass into your bedroom and find out once you find out what your best 4 directions, there is also 4 unlucky directions. You may very well find that if you're not sleeping well, or one of you, if you're sickly, if you have a partner, it could be that maybe just a simple adjustment as of moving how you're sleeping would also help.
So if I could just clarify, so your power directions are good. You had mentioned as it relates to your office, your desk placement, it's the same, the power directions work in sleeping as well. In other words, there's not a different power direction for sleeping than there is for desk placement, or is there?
No, but you're absolutely right. The confusion comes when you're seated and your body is facing the best power direction. And when you're sleeping, it's the direction your head is pointing, but it is the same power direction. For instance, my
Okay.
first best is west. So I would want to sit in my office with my body facing west, but I want to sleep with my head going west, pointing west.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay.
Okay.
That makes sense, yes.
Okay. So that's, there's four lucky directions. There's four unlucky directions. I have worked with several, been very fortunate to work with and study under Bazai or Feng Shui masters. And there's a couple of them that wouldn't even consider not including this in anybody's report when they're doing Feng Shui because they feel it's so instrumental in knowing, your earth energy, your birth luck, so that you can help
Yes.
that along with the earth luck. Okay. And at the end, like I
And
said, when we get to the final screen, there'll be some resources there that you can get more information on that.
okay, sounds good.
Okay. So the next thing we're going to talk about in your office environment, let's say our focus is on office. And one of the main things about feng shui is the qi. And, we want to, in having and harnessing good qi in our environments, it is composed of the five elements. And you can see them there on the chart: fire, earth, metal, water, and wood. And these
I
all,
don't think you've gone to the chart yet on the
you don't
screen.
have the five elements on your chart?
I'm sorry. I thought you were referring to a chart. You were showing us a chart, and I wasn't seeing the chart. So my mistake.
Do you see it now, though?
No, I don't. I think maybe your slide hasn't advanced yet.
Oh, okay. Let me see if I can find that for you. So you have the Bazai?
Yes, we're in Bazai and personal elements. So I think maybe if you just advance your screen, we'll see the
Okay.
chart. There we
I
go.
do. You have it now?
Yes, there it is.
Awesome. Okay. Everybody has that now?
Yes, I believe so. Somebody had said that they didn't see the chart either, but yes,
Okay.
yes, we're
Great,
good now.
great, great. Okay, so in talking about the chart, how this relates to feng shui and qi is the qi is made up of five elements, so having a balanced environment or an environment with the five elements, basically what you're doing is you can't eliminate qi, you don't want to ever stagnate qi, but the way to manipulate the qi in our environment is to have the elements and have a good balance of the elements. So one of the things I thought would be useful is knowing that how they produce one another. So in other words, if you look at the top of the chart and it says fire, and then there's an arrow followed by earth, and then there's metal. If we look at that example, and let's say in our environment, we had some fire energy, but we didn't have any earth energy. And fire would be represented by the color red, or, maybe it's the fireplace in our environment, but mainly for the purposes of in our office, let's say it's just red. But let's say there was
Okay.
no earth energy present, then what would happen is fire would be very destructive toward metal that was present. So it's actually a supportive cycle. So fire supports earth, earth supports metal, metal supports water and wood. They all support each other. If some of those elements are missing, and the way you could talk about that or visualize that in especially design, with most of the people, the listeners doing design, is, if one of these elements sometimes a popular design would be maybe a metal environment, all white walls and metal or chrome decor. That shows you that that's more metal, a metal given environment. So you're missing some of these other elements, and it may not be as enhancing to certain people based on their birth luck. Does that make sense?
Okay, yes. Yes, it does.
Okay, so, fire, let's talk about that. Fire can either be the element or it can be the colors red and pink, sometimes purple. And it can be represented by like the star shape or pointed shapes. So sometimes, especially in an office, you might have a wall that you want to put the fire, and you'll see this later in the presentation, where you might want to put some fire element, but you don't want to or can't because it may be a rented office or something where you can't paint that wall red. Then you could always put an item on that wall, say like maybe a big clock that has a lot of pointed shapes for the frame, such as like a star shape or something like that, that would give you the fire element just as a visualization. The same
Interesting.
thing.
The shape, the fact that shapes are involved is very fascinating. I knew about the elements and the colors, but it's shapes as well, which is very interesting.
And I thought, especially with design, people that are doing design, it's not always conducive to bring in a color, that someone might like.
Yes.
But you can often bring in a shape. And some feng shui
Yes.
masters that I've worked with say that shapes can be more powerful than the actual element itself. So, that
Oh, wow.
has an effect on us. And it's also creating a balanced environment. But you may have a person such as, let's say, the wood color, which is green. And although that's great in your office environment, that's good spring growing energy, and that's what it maintains. But someone may not like green, so you could bring in something that's more similar, like the shape of wood element would be more of a rectangular shape. So you could use something like a conference table in your office, or you could use one of the office pieces, one of the furniture pieces could be representative of wood element, even though it's not green. So I'll go around these and give the shapes, and then if you have any questions on that, Anne, you can stop me.
Okay, perfect.
So if fire would be the pointed shapes, that would be more like the stars or anything that has a triangle shape that points. Earth is a square. Metal is round. Water is wavy. And wood is rectangular or column-like, so you can think of that like a tree. Sometimes, especially in an office environment, you could bring in screens that are tall, maybe shoulder height or even head height. And sometimes people will use those as partitions in between, but that's actually kind of similar to wood energy because it's column-like.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
And at the same time with the productive cycle, so sometimes you will find that if you can get comfortable working not only just with color, because color is a high vibrational element, especially in your office, and also, especially having some fire in your office, you like to bring in more yang energy so that you always feel more uplifted and inspired, and fire element can do that. But, at the same time, be aware of destructive cycles going on, which actually slows the chi or reduces the chi. So, this chart is very helpful for that. Knowing that you're producing a cycle and keeping a balance, but you're also, if there's an element or something that's missing, you can also reduce it and maybe not want to do that.
Interesting. Okay.
And I'll give you a little example of this. And I had one time I had a woman ask me to consult, and this was for a bedroom for little girls. And the little girls were 15 months apart, and the bedroom was all pink, pinks and purples. And she said they never sleep. They're bouncing off the walls. She said, I can't get them to settle down. And she said, what do I do? There's an over exaggeration of fire energy. And so what I said to her was bring in some earth energy, because even though the fire energy is the exaggerated element, there was no earth energy to combat that or reduce it a little bit. So we brought in some earth energy in the form of beiges and off-white colors and things like that, and that reduced that energy down a little bit. Or the other thing you could do is if you had an over, in any room, an overabundance of the fire, you could bring in some wood element, like add some plants or things for the fire, because that will also reduce some of that.
Interesting. Good.
Yeah.
So I have to ask about the little girls. Did they start sleeping better?
And they slept better. And the other thing they had in their bedrooms too, yes, they did. They both had their own little fish tanks. And fish tanks are great for an office, great for dining room, great for an area where you want extra yang energy. But in a sleeping room, a bedroom, we don't want to have anything like that, because, like EMF energy or those electromagnetic frequencies, anything that has a lot of movement, and especially where someone doesn't sleep well already, we want to create an environment that's going to be more yin. We're going to talk about that next.
Okay.
Okay, so tell me if you get that screen. Do you have this one? This yin yang?
Yes.
Okay, great. So as you see in Feng Shui, this is also, and I'm building up to finally getting us to the office, but I think this is very important for us to understand all of this is going on, because then when you go into your office, you'll be looking at it in a whole new way. The yin yang, there are certain rooms, just as I mentioned on the bedroom, typically homes, where they have the bedrooms or those kind of energies, is to close down or make that energy more closed and dark, and even the lighting to be lower so that it's more yin. In an office, you actually don't want it to be like that. So here's an example for me. I have a home office that is in a log home. And my log home is very yin because it's heavy, heavy wood logs. And, in the office, I have to be careful to make sure I keep the windows not covered with curtains, so that I can bring in more outside energy, more light, more open energy into that yin room. In my office building, one of the things that we do is, we want to keep more yang energy for all of us, feeling more energized and moving. So again, we pay attention to the colors, the light that's coming in, so you want to be thinking in those ways too, when you're designing your office.
Very clear. Makes a lot of sense.
Great. So, another thing to think about is, and I'm sure all of you are design people, so colors have, I find this the most fascinating subject. The colors have so many meanings, and, we'll get to this on one of the last slides that you see, but having colors in your office, again, relates back to the birth luck that we have. So some of the colors we're going to resonate with just because that's who we are and what we like. So I'm more of an earth person. I love earthy colors, but I love big splashes of red here and there too. So you might have another person. My daughter, on the other hand, has an office. She loves metal, she loves chrome, and she likes very little color. So that's just an example of what you would be looking at, in the colors. And that's all. I don't think I have to talk to you about, the different colors. That's what you all do.
Yes.
They are amazing, using the power of color, in your office. So that's a huge, huge point. Do you have any question on the yin yang and why we would use that and talk about it?
I don't think so. I think that it does. Let me just clarify. Going back to the colors, then, when you're, because yes, I completely understand, the power of colors and so forth. So in terms of yin and yang, it's going to be the cool colors versus the warm colors. It's the same thing, right? I mean, it doesn't change from the design world to feng shui, correct? So warm colors,
No.
your warm colors are going to be your yin, your reds, your yellows, your golds, and then your yang are going to be your cool colors, which are, the blues and greens and so forth. Is that correct still?
Well, not necessarily. That's a really good point, Anne. Red would actually be considered more yang, and blue would be considered more yin, depending on the different hues that we use. But also in setting up your office, especially, there are certain colors for certain directions based on the tool that feng shui uses, so that you have like an energy template in your building. So more of what you're saying is when you're using warm colors or cool colors are more the design preference. And then when you're creating a little more yang energy, the deeper, more vibrant colors are, just to raise the energy of who's watching, who's viewing that color. Or, like a conference room, been called into doctors' offices, and, the reception areas, they'll say, what is a good color here? And sometimes just having a common earth color or earth colors be predominant in that doctor's office makes everyone feel comfortable, because that's where our feet are. We're all earth people, basically. So, if he wants to reach, more of the population, then he would keep the colors more subdued. Some people would be put off by very strong yang type colors.
Okay. Okay. And at the end, will there be some tools? Will some of the tools be, will that help us as well with the color? Because that's a little bit of a change for us, and as designers, I think.
Yes, it'll help you. I'll show you. There's a tool called the Bagua, and I have that at the last couple slides, and we'll spend quite a bit of time there. Okay?
Okay. All right.
Okay. So this screen is the office arrangement. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, great. And what I've done here is I want to just pull out and look at this as I would look at that, not necessarily as a design, as a designer, but look at that, from a feng shui perspective. So in an office, one of the things in the top right or top left corner, you'll see that's a meeting room conference table. So, some practitioners, and I agree with this too, is, you want to look at the whole building as a whole and decide where you're going to place that conference table. And that would be based on more of the classical feng shui. But what I want to pull out of this, for you is when you're having a conference table, whether it be in your office, or, sometimes people have a small conference table in their office, or they have it in a separate location. Having an oval shape creates unity around the table. Having it in a wood table also is very comforting to the occupants. Having it sometimes in the color, having the chairs be in the color blue helps promote communication, those kind of things. So that's all I'm really pointing out with this, not necessarily anything to do with design. I just want to talk about placement and shapes again. Okay. So the next screen over from the conference room table, you'll see that there's two offices, and you'll see the entrance in the bottom right-hand corner on the first one, and then the bottom left-hand corner on the second one. Do you see that?
Yes. Yes.
So when you're seated in your office, you always want to make sure you can see the door. And ideally, this is not necessarily an ideal setup, because you, as the person that's seated in the chair, is basically looking at the computer screen, facing the computer screen. That is the direction you want to see, like, what would be my best facing direction? But it would be more ideal, Anne, if your back could have a wall supporting it so that you would have some support. So, people, the nice part about this is the desk is attached to the wall, which gives support to the person, kind of a hidden support rather than a free floating desk. But, ideally, it would be better to have the chair swiveled in both of these directions so that your back has more of a wall support. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes, it does.
But you want to be able to see the door, always knowing the entrance, people entering the door. And, the same with the two chairs on the opposite side of the desk. I know for me in my other business, I always have the two chairs, but I make sure that there's a wall supporting those people and that they're never in line of a door coming in because it makes them very uncomfortable. They don't feel, they're always wondering who's going to be entering or exiting that door.
Interesting. Okay. So let me ask you this. If your office is a small space, and are there ways to compensate if you're not able to position, the furniture as you should, I guess, for lack of a better word? Are there things that you can do to if really it's very difficult to have a wall, say, supporting your back, is there something you can do instead?
Yeah, you might want to position yourself between a credenza, so like say the top diagram has in the middle, that's, a portion of that desk, let's say it could split away and be on the back wall. That would be enough support so that your chair is really between the credenza and the desk. Then you're giving yourself a little more support than all the extra room, on your back. Or if that's not possible and there is no place to do that, have a tall backed chair, a chair that comes all the way up to the
Okay.
top of a very tall back chair gives you the illusion of support.
Okay. So I guess the bottom line is, because I know I realize I may be taking up some time, and we don't we don't have forever this evening. As interesting as this is that there are things that can compensate. Some of these may be ideals. There are things that we can do to compensate if the perfect way isn't available to us.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
And then the next one I wanted you to take note of is the let's say you have a reception area or your desk may be free floating in the center of a room and there is no wall for support anywhere around, then the best way to take care of that would be to have a supportive chair, a tall chair,
Okay.
so that you do
Gotcha.
feel
Okay.
you have some support. Okay.
Okay.
So that's really,
Okay.
just to give you some pointers as to why, how your desk should be, especially to the entrance to each of these areas.
Okay.
Okay.
That
Now
makes
the
sense.
bottom, let's talk about the bottom a little bit because this is probably more like what a lot of us deal with in our offices. One of the things that I was fortunate enough to be able to work with some people in Europe on feng shui. And one of the things they said that we are great at as Americans is clutter and gathering and keeping lots of things. Well, some of the things, and although this is kind of comical when it says hideous armoire, but basically sometimes when I'm working with some people, I'll mention to them about the artwork that they have in their office, or I'll mention to them about a piece of furniture that they have there, and they'll say that they hate it or they don't like it. They just don't know what to do
Right.
with it. All that energy affects you, so every time you're coming in subconsciously, you're thinking, I wish I could get rid of that piece. Again, lowers our chi, changes our chi. So beware of things that you don't like in your office, that you don't really love. And also, the other big thing I want you to note on this is if your desk was down at the bottom, in the bottom portion of this, and you were seated behind it with somebody coming in the door, that's fine. That's a good position to be. But I want you to notice that the red bookcase has like a pointed arrow that I don't know if you can see my cursor. Can you see my
Yes.
cursor?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so it has a pointed
Absolutely.
arrow that may come right across your desk and maybe at you. The same thing over here. This piece may have has a poison arrow that comes across the desk at you. So one of the things to notice about energy and chi is when chi comes in the door, it comes and it circulates along the walls, comes off our furnishings. And when it comes off our furnishings, it comes off faster than as it meanders along walls. And so it meanders along the wall, it comes to a window, it goes out the window, or comes back in the window. So that energy is moving all the time. I have a secretary that she had some back pain and neck pain, and we noticed that at her desk she had a filing cabinet. She was seated maybe here in this spot. She had a filing cabinet over here that had one of these arrows pointing right at her back. So we changed it by adding a plant at the top of that had like a one of the plants that has like long philodendron type flowers, and had that running down the corner of the filing cabinet. And so that would soften that energy so it wouldn't hit her back.
Fascinating.
It is amazing. It's just amazing.
Yes.
All of this is affecting us.
That's amazing.
So we've talked and touched on the colors, the doors and windows. So again, the door here, you want to be facing the entrance. So you would ideally want to be seated behind that desk and facing the entrance coming in. And this is actually a good desk placement, having one side against a wall. That's kind of an illusion of support. And the last thing I want to touch on this screen is just sound and scent. There's a lot of information, as you probably know, on scent too, and essential oils and things like that. And they affect us within 3 seconds. And that is also changes our chi and our energy. So I would also pay attention to that in our office space. If you can add, maybe it's a water fountain, for a nice soft sound, or if you can add some scent, now that's also in an office space, adding lemon, adding a scent of orange, very uplifting, invigorating, and makes you feel your energy instantly uplifts.
That's very, very helpful.
So now we're at the juicy good fun part, and I love this. And please stop me with any questions, but this is, like the feng shui tool. This is called a bagua, and the feng shui tool is used, and you can use it in Western bagua. You can use it. It's similar in Flying Star, although that tool is called a lopan. And the lopan in Flying Star has 24 mountains, and each one of those mountains is represented by 15 degrees. So we certainly don't have the time today to talk about that, and how in-depth that is. But at the same time, that classical or Flying Star feng shui is very, very powerful feng shui, and that uses the compass. So that is more compass driven. So for the purposes of our discussion tonight, we're going to talk about Western bagua, how you could place this bagua coming into your office. And so you could start setting up your own energy template, so to speak, in your office. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And I wanted to check on our time, Anne. How are we doing?
We have about 15 minutes.
Okay, great. So, let's talk about this. The bagua basically has 8-9 life aspirations, and that's represented again by each one of these guas. They're called guas. And so each one of these life aspirations, what we do is we take this bagua and we overlay it over the room. So, you're coming into, and I'm going to go back, my screen skipped. Do you have the same screen on?
Yeah, we're good. We're right there with you now.
Okay, good. So you're going to come into the office, and you're going to stand at the door of your office, And that's where the black or the water or the career would be coming into your office. And then the far wall facing you would be your fame or reputation area in your office. And this is in the Western Bagua. And then each
Okay.
one of these, so then over in the left area of your office, if you're standing at the door, this is your wealth area or your wealth and prosperity, gua. And then over in the right area is your love and romance, or just wonderful, loving relationships coming into your life. This is very helpful in Western Bagua. There's a lot of the belief around that is, we're imprinting it with intentions. We're putting the Bagua in our area after we've learned what is going on in our office. We're taking a step back and saying, okay, what is our the major element that we're comfortable with? What elements do we want to have predominant in our office? And then what you're doing is you're taking this Bagua and you're setting it up in your office or even seated at your desk. You can place this on your desk with the black as your seat in your career, and then have the fame and the red fire at the end, across from your desk, at the end of your desk, right directly across from where you're seated.
Wow. So this can go from your entire office all the way down to just your desk.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I say to people, there is actual science of quantum physics that when you bring in water, you bring in color, and you're starting to bring in shapes, and you're actually manipulating that chi or energy in your office. And now you intentionally use the Bagua to create the intentions in those areas. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, I got a notice from somebody she couldn't hear me.
No, I can hear you. I can hear you just fine.
Okay, good. So you basically, what you do is you're setting up this energy template into your office. And what that does is you've now worked with you understand the elements, you understand the shapes that you're using and the colors, and now you're manipulating this earth block or feng shui and qi, so it's becoming very supportive for you. So what your eyes are now landing on, you're creating a wealth area, you're creating, maybe that's just a small plant on your desk in bamboo and water. Your fame, reputation area, maybe the wall across from you is all of your design certificates, or maybe it's a few photos of homes or businesses or offices that you've done work with, or what you're aspiring to have. So, this is the juicy fun part for your, conscious and subconscious mind, is to, overlay this on your office and on your desk, and start to watch the energies come in, that's supporting this. So, when I have a couple of assistants that work for me, one of the first things we do is we talk about what their birth luck is, and we do the Bazai chart, and I get them in their best seating positions. But then I encourage them to bring in family photos and, put them in the eastern area of the office, or, over to the far left. If they want to be more creative, maybe we hang some paintings and, something that makes them feel more creative, or metal, anything that's metal in that area. Maybe it's a sculpture made of round symbolic metal, and we put that over in the right area. And so, then they're tied into their office too. Is that helpful?
Fascinating. Yes, it's very helpful. Now I know how clients feel sometimes when, or actually students, when I'm teaching, design, and they say, oh my gosh, I've got to go home and, my house is wrong. That's how I'm feeling right now about my office. Oh boy.
Yeah. It is great because it really helps you, as you know, in design. I think, in your work, I admire that a lot too, because you come in with a whole different perspective and a third eye for people. And I think with feng shui, what we tend to do is we come in with the whole spiritual side, not that we don't have design in mind, but we're looking at all the hidden things that are going on between the shapes and if you're really good at it, you can feel the energy and where it's stuck, where it seems to be stagnant and where it seems to be moving too fast and how it's not supporting the people. So going back to an office, this is another thing to be aware of. Sometimes, if we have a lot of windows and your view is of something that's of nature, that's great because that's uplifting chi, that's energizing and for you. But if you have a lot of windows and it's not necessarily something, it could be an office that's inside offices, but it has like a glass wall of windows and all you're seeing is the activity out in, the other offices, then, that may not be as helpful and you may need to close some of that energy off.
So when you say you can feel this, when you say you can feel that took a while for you to get to that point, did it not?
Oh my goodness, yes, absolutely.
Okay. Okay.
Absolutely.
So if I'm working in my own office, I wouldn't necessarily. I need to pay attention to this. Maybe I can feel some things, but this is what's really going to keep me on track.
Exactly. And so when you're
Okay.
using the bagua, then in flying star feng shui, that takes into account heaven luck, or, that's associated with the time of the building, the compass direction of the building. And then what you do is you take this bagua and you turn it based on the compass direction of the facing direction of the building. So, for the purposes of this, and you're starting to get involved with this and you're using it, I think Western Bagua, that's what I started with. And, Western Bagua will help you start to really feel your environment. And at the same time, if you're feeling like you're not necessarily noticing it, what I would say to you is go in and remove as much as you can off of the walls. Take the curtains down if there's any curtains. Take the pictures out, anything like that, and notice how you feel. You will feel it immediately, that it feels different and you feel uncomfortable. And then start putting things back with intention in certain areas of the bagua, based on this, and you'll be amazed. And what you will notice is things start showing up, like maybe you'll start to see more clients or more wealth, or, career is more enhanced, or, you'll start to notice these things. It happens.
This is really fascinating.
It starts to get your mental energies, your mental questions, going like crazy, and you won't be the same. I mean, I have to say that, for 25 years, I've been very fortunate. I have a wonderful growing business that's been consistent. And, through the years, I've written books and studied feng shui, but I never tire of it. It is an amazing process. And, I know now it's all about the physics of the space. Your energy is vibrating right now. Your room is vibrating right now, and everything in your room is vibrating at a certain level of vibration. And so you get to manipulate and change that with colors and shape and sound and scent. You get to change all that vibration, and that will uplift you, which is fantastic.
Yes, it is. Yes.
So, do you have any more questions on this part, and on using the bug?
I don't. I am not seeing any questions from any of our listeners, so I think we're good.
Okay, good. So the next, the next slide is just, I have a bunch of resources here for you to look into, and I highly recommend all of them. Feng Shui Plaza is my good friend Susie Miller, and she has some great information. She's a master at what she does. Positive Living by Design is my company, and I have also had the privilege of working with a Feng Shui master from Malaysia, and he is amazing and just an amazing person on the study of Bazai. So if that intrigues you, Joey Yap is great to check out his site. And there's a one I would love to leave you with. We've learned a little bit about, how you can have success in your office with feng shui, but, understanding your birth luck and qi and the yin and yang and the impact of color and arranging it is really important. But if you want to have some fun and you want to have something that's eye-opening and you've not seen this, check out Hidden Messages in Water on YouTube. And you'll see exactly what happens to not only water when music is played to it or words are said to it, but the whole message behind that is we're 90% water ourselves. So we are impacted, in a multitude of ways. And so our office needs to be critically great with feng shui, and the same thing for our bedrooms. That's where we spend most of our time.
Wow. Well, I think one of our listeners said fascinating, and I would have to agree. Oh, we do have a question here. Hope we have enough time. You don't mind this, do you?
No.
Can the pink, yellow, and gray areas be discussed?
The pink, yellow, and gray on the bagua?
I believe if that is what you mean, say yes.
Okay.
That is what she means.
Yeah. So in the pink, this area here, this is, traditionally it's an earth gua. So that means it's an earth energy. But in order for igniting loving relationships and just overall encouraging good union between even people. And I say this for clients, wanting to have wonderful, loving clients come in that you can serve, then you might want to put pictures of couples or, look at that area in your office and say, first of all, what's going on there right now? And then what I would say is set up something that is pink in color because it's making you think love. That's the purpose of the pink. And also put something that's where you put your relationship, your marriage, your picture of you and your spouse. And here's a fun one for the children and creativity. When I first had my feng shui consultation 15 years ago, she said to me, I had mentioned that I had three children. The oldest one was 13 years older than my baby, he was 13 years younger. And I have a daughter in between. And I said, they don't get along really well. And she said, put them all in metal frames along this wall in my office, put all their pictures there, and then tie them all together with, a lovely ribbon, made of white, that would represent metal, but you're using the metal frames, and tie them all together. And that was really profound because within a short time, the oldest son had a little more interest in the younger son, so I'll let you be the judge of that. But that's just an example of what you can do. And then the silver, what I say to people is this is a metal area. Both of these areas are predominantly metal energy, but in the white for the metal and in the silver for the metal, this is where you would encourage, if you believe in angels or guidance from beyond, or maybe you had loved ones pass, you may want to set up a shelf in your office that reminds you of somebody that you just know is watching out for you. Or this is where you may put up, maybe you have a belief in using some angels or some idols or things like that. So, that's what those would be for.
And then very quickly, I think she had asked about the yellow as well. So can you, I know we're running out of time here, but yes.
Yeah, yellow is really representative of earth, energy, and health. So in the centers, center of our office, of course, that's where our desk is, but, in the center of your home, maybe, look at that as an extension of you from your office. What is going on in the center of your home? Is there any place there that you could add something that's yellow that would remind you of, taking care of Earth? Or is it something that you could add a painting or a photo that you could put there? But basically, when you're setting up your desk, that's really where your equipment is for the work you're doing.
So then our desk should be in the center or close to the center of the office, if possible.
Yes, if possible, that would be better. Yeah, so it gives you enough room
Okay.
from behind you. And then, having your desk in the center of the office is pretty good, but sometimes and I like this myself, having one side or the other side leaning on the wall is good for support.
Okay. Wow. Well, we are just at 8. Can I ask you to do me one more favor, Sibylla? Would you go to that last page and just, if anyone didn't copy down a website that might be helpful to them, just to give people just a minute, because okay, well, we have one more question here. An issue with cords. Does that matter when the desk is in the middle? If everything
They
is not
do,
always
and
wireless.
they do. That is a great question. They have cord covers. I don't know if you've seen them, but we use those in our offices as much as possible because, again, that's feng shui energy, and it's not real pleasing to the eye, and it can be. You can have tons of them in one spot, so you really want to try to keep them hidden or covered up. Absolutely.
Okay. So when you say a cord cover, are you talking about could it be something like, material, how chandeliers sometimes have the covers on the cord coming from the ceiling that was a fabric or something like that? Does that work?
Yes, that would work, Anne. And also, you can even buy the ones that run along the floor that completely cover it up.
Yes.
It looks like a piece of
for the floor. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Gotcha. Good. Okay.
Yeah, definitely want to
Well,
hide those.
Okay. I have to tell you, Sibylla, I feel like I could talk about this forever. This is just really, really fascinating. You certainly gave me a lot to think about, and from the feedback from the presenters, it looks like you've done that for them as well. So
I'm glad.
I cannot thank you enough for being with us this evening, for sharing your knowledge with us, giving us these resources too. This is just fabulous. So thank you. It has been a pleasure.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it very much. Love to hear from you.
All right. Well, again, thank you, and everyone have a good evening. Good night.
Okay, you too. Good night.